Hi, everybody. This is Scott Staszak with Game Changer Therapy Services, and this is Hey Bay City.
I'm kind of curious to ask you about this because I'm relatively new dad. I've got a 4-year-old. I've got 2 1-year-old. How has being a dad changed for you over time? Like right now, I feel like I'm in the baby dad mode, the toddler dad mode. But I'm kind of interested, like looking into the future of what's in store for me. Like how has being a dad changed as your kids have gotten older?
Yeah, I want to stay away from the stereotypical like cherish those moments because they go fast.
Yeah.
But my kids are getting into that. They 8, 9, and 10, and we just try and create experiences now. Create experiences that our kids will look back on. And before, it's like, we're kind of always looking at the next stage. Like, oh, man, pretty soon. Like, when you're at the point where right now, like a year in, it's like, oh, bro, I can't wait till they're out of diapers. I can't wait till they're eating solid food.
100% feel that.
A big one for me was way back when was that they could buckle themselves in with their booster seat. Once they could hook themselves, it's like, oh my, this is next level type stuff.
Like, I don't have to crawl into that car anymore and like reach in there.
I'm a big guy, so getting in back into that third row, even in a minivan, it's tough. Oh man, it is tough.
It's the worst. We've got a pretty decent sized car for all the kids, and still like that back seat, dude. It's just tough. And I feel so bad for my wife because I can at least kind of manhandle the seats in there, the babies in there, but to have to like wedge yourself behind the seat, you think it'd be easier?
I gotta like stretch and do sit-ups before I put my kids in the car.
That's how you slip a disc or something.
Yeah. So the biggest thing that I did recently with my kids, going back to that, is we went to Atlanta for spring break, and my wife said, "Oh, we can go to a Braves game." Well, we didn't know this. It was the opening day to the Braves, and that whole stadium and everything was so awesome. And where we had our seats, we were kind of low, third base side. And I'm thinking, how could I make this a super memorable moment for my kids? And I'm talking, there's a stadium of 60,000. They had the fighter jets flying over. And I made a decision at that moment. This was this spring. I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to start the wave opening day at the Braves. And so I talked to my kids. I'm like, what do you think? You guys want to help me start the wave? And I could say with confidence that I was the guy that started a triple-decker wave to opening day of the Atlanta Braves in 2023.
I'm the best dad in the world.
And that was my process. So I just say create those crazy experiences that they'll be like, Dad was crazy. Dad did some crazy cool things.
Yeah, I feel that. Pull that microphone just so it's centered in front of your mouth. Yeah, beautiful.
Okay.
I love the encouragement to like create experiences. I used to be a middle school teacher here, and I am not casting judgment upon any parent because, bro, like, I understand you parents. Like, we got a tough job. But what I saw, and this is just my opinion, there was such a infatuation with sports and activities, and I'm in year-long baseball league with my kids, and like, well, he wants to play hockey now too, and literally families just going from 3:30 after school till 9 o'clock at night from practice to practice, like all these other things, which if that's what you want in life, more power to you. But what I saw was that you didn't have a lot of experiences because you're like every free moment is taken up by somebody wanting you to be somewhere or do something or this team or whatever. Like there was no time for random trips up north or like, hey, do you want to just hop in the car and go on a road trip, or do you want to go to Detroit, or do you want to go to see a show, or like do you just want to play outside and throw water balloons at each other? Because it was so rigorously, like the schedule was just so intense, like there wasn't a lot of space for experiences.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. We actually, and it's a kind of a side set from our Game Changer Therapy Services, but my wife and I started an organization, a travel ball organization, for the main reason that they're...
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's actually called the Great Lakes Bay Game Changers, and the area is completely filled with travel sports organizations, you're right, and we set out with the mission and the mindset that we don't want to burn kids out. We don't want parents to play year-round sports. We want them to go and have a summer and not be like, our summers were spent practices 3 days a week.
I heard that so many times from parents.
Yeah, we said as parents that we weren't going to do stuff like that, and then we fell into it, and we're like, this is like, we bought a place up north and we're like, how are we going to use it? Well, we ended up starting our own organization with the idea that seasons are going to be short term. We're going to incorporate and promote local sport participation and multi-sport play without the idea that this is a life sentence or thing. And so we're trying to kind of create an experience where you can get that experience playing a sport and going and doing tournaments, but it's at no cost to your everyday life and at no cost to being a kid. And so exactly what you're saying was the reason that resonated with that kind of organization.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. You make a good point, because if I'm a family with the mindset of, I do want my child to play baseball, but I'm not really sold on it being that intense. Like if you don't have a league set up with that philosophy in mind, you will end up falling into something that you don't necessarily want as a family. Again, like if that's what your family wants, go and do it. But if that's not something that I want, I can't just say, well, I know that you guys have practice 5 days a week, but can I go like 2 days a week? Can I bring my kid 2 days? Because I mean, now that's not fair to anybody.
No.
And you do end up just kind of falling into, okay, I guess we're going to be at this thing 6 days a week.
It was crazy. Like for us, the whole focus of that organization was like, burnout is such a real thing. We were hearing from other people at like the high school level coaching that every year we have kids that showed such promise at 13, 14, 12, and they get to 17, 18. That's kind of their year to shine. A lot of travel parents think, and I don't say a lot, but some parents think like, I'm grooming my kid for the major leagues or they're going to be a professional sports or a D1 athlete. And the realistic approach is we are trying to get our kids ready for the high school game, and we just want them to be at the level they need to be at to play and be competitive at the next level.
Yeah.
And we were seeing kids that were going so serious so soon that by the time they're a senior in high school, that should be like their big year. They're like, I'm done with it. I don't want to play anymore. And so we are taking that approach of we are 100% not going to burn your kid out. We want to create a fun baseball. None sports needs to be fun, but aside from being fun, these things need to be, focused on just getting your kid ready and learning the game. And if that's not fun, they're going to lose interest real quick.
Yeah. That's when did you guys start this league?
So we literally started it like, we just had our first round of tryouts. We started it like this spring. So it was really wild. And we were starting with just doing basketball. And then we got a bunch of interest for baseball. And we're like, well, if we're doing a travel league, how hard is it to maybe add another sport? But we want to create partnerships with like the YMCA of Bay City and create partnerships. And we wanted it to be regional. We don't want it to be the Bay City Game Changers or that way. So we really, Matt Flan, I love Matt Flan. Like, and he's got me hooked on the Great Lakes Bay region. So if you notice on all of our stuff for Game Changer Therapy Services or this, it's Great Lakes Bay region, Great Lakes Bay. And I absolutely love it. I mean, for us, Bay City's our home, and it's our home base even for Game Changer Therapy Services. It's where we've got our start. But we try and be regional as much as we can.
Yeah. Typically you don't hear people like I'm starting a business or I'm starting this thing. Typically you don't hear people say I'm starting a youth sports league.
Yeah,
so I love that. You're changing the game.
Yeah. Honestly, that's our slogan: changing the game in youth sports.
Yeah,
it's true.
Well, I absolutely agree with what you said about it. It can be such a trap to get these kids burned out early when their entire lives become surrounded by this one activity, and like you said, then the timing gets screwed up because by the time they end up senior in high school, the fire's gone, or they have the overuse injuries, like they've been pitching their heart out for the last decade, and it ends up getting kind of caught up to them at this most critical time. Is when you see the decline of like physical performance, or they peaked early, or mentally they're just like they don't want to do it anymore because we went so hard to the paint early on, and we kind of stole that fire from them.
Yeah. And that the seasonal, the seasonal sport idea is what I grew up knowing. Like, and winter was basketball, fall was football, spring, summer was baseball.
Yep.
And really summer was spending time at my grandparents' house playing with my cousins. And, we did a farm. My mom's dad, which we all call him Bunk, he did a farm that all of the grandkids would go at. And Monday through Friday, that's what we did. And, If you were good enough, you played on All-Stars after Little League and you had that experience, and that was the season though. And so it's kind of interesting how that's changed, because travel sports didn't exist when we were around, and year-round sports didn't. And but we're set out trying to do something different that will create a win-win for parents and kids.
Yeah, I love that. If people are listening to that and they hear that, they're like, this is something that I want my family to do, how do they go about getting involved in this league?
So we're pretty big on large with like the Facebook marketing side, but if you were to Facebook Great Lakes Bay Game Changers, or GLB Game Changers is what it is, there's contact information, and that gets a hold of myself and my wife. But we have a great group of coaches too. A lot of them have either college baseball experience, or they played travel ball all through up, and they played high school ball, or they've coached previously. And so we're trying to do away with a lot of like the dad coaches too. Yeah. We have a couple, but for the most part, we're trying to eliminate that bias too. Because that can be tough.
My twin brother Matt, he's coaching soccer, and I was like, Matt, you've never coached, like you've never even played soccer. He's like, yeah, but I'm the dad, and that's great for him. But I was just like, how did you end up getting drafted to be a soccer coach, man? But it sounds like you have this great balance between, you have really legitimate coaches with lots of experience. Kids are going to learn the skills that they need to, but at the same time having some kind of balance there that says, you know what, we understand that this is the kind of role you want the sport to play in your kids' lives, and we're here to facilitate that. I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, like even talking about physical health too, the multi-sport experience and having different motor patterns and learning different skills and all of those things. Just thinking about physical longevity. I mean, you're avoiding injuries and things like that, which I think is a great way to kind of dovetail about what exactly do you guys do at Game Changers. I mean, you see billboards and I hear you all over the place, but for somebody that's not familiar with Game Changer, give me kind of a 101.
My wife and I, Kelly, started Game Changer in 2016. I went to SVSU and graduated as an OT, and I kind of fell into my first role at Saginaw Community Mental Health as their OT.
Really?
At that point in time, there was a big emphasis on autism-based services within community mental health. It was kind of on the up and coming from a 2012 initiative. So we're back in 2014. I started at CMH and working with kids who have autism, and I started to realize, I'm like, man, OT is a great discipline for kids with that. Working on activities of daily living, dressing, those things. But when we transitioned to ABA, which is applied behavior analysis, that's kind of the predominant field that works with kids who have autism. It's really a discipline designed to work with kids who have autism. And the focus for us was, and me at that time, is how do I blend and integrate OT services into ABA so they complement each other. The ultimate goal between ABA and OT is improved community function, improved independence, and improved response to everyday situations. At Game Changer Therapy Services, the main focus is functional outcome that carries over to the home. And that's the most important part. Parents are excited when they hear a client did something in the clinic, like, oh my gosh, they're doing amazing. They said 6 or 7 different phrases or words that they've never been able to do, and they spontaneously did it. But if they're not able to do that at home, and they're only told about that they did these things in the clinic, and now you're being discharged because they proved they could do those things, that's that residual gain that is by far the most important part to parents. And that's where we want to create that moment. Like, services in the clinic should be focused on creating a proof of concept for strategies that can be applied in the home or community, and that can carry over. So we try and create kind of a shotgun approach to our services where we really provide a community-based, home-based integration model, because, again, mastering it just in the clinic isn't enough. We need to master those things in the home. A lot of the strategies that are utilized are almost, in my opinion, Band-Aids and they're good for in-the-moment functioning. And that's where I say a parent comes to us with a client. There's several deficits. There's several strengths that client has too, but the deficits is what we're focusing on. How do we make an improvement in those? And being able to look at how can we help that parent in the moment is more of those strategies that we have a parent, hey, make sure this and this happens, or when he does this, remove this, itemize this. There's a lot of strategies that require a lot of input from somebody else. That's an externalization of those things. where the rubber meets the road with Game Changers is we need to take strategies and internalize them in that client, because at the end of the day, that's how we produce a functioning adult, a child, a teenager, is by internalizing those processes where they no longer need if you walk into a clinic URI and we have an issue with the lighting or an issue with sounds, and it's to the point where sensory based deficits. I always say I hate the feeling of cotton balls on my fingers. It's like nails on a chalkboard for me. That's another one. Those are basically sensory deficits for us. Those are things that elicit a response. Now imagine if there's a kiddo who's hypersensitive to lighting. That's much like cotton balls, but it's amplified to a power of 10.
Yeah.
And that kiddo has no idea. For me, I just stay away from touching cotton balls. I don't want to. I don't like the way they feel, so I'm like, I don't want to mess with them. I always have my wife take the cotton out of the pill bottle if I need. But for a kiddo who has no idea how to cope with that, behavior is communication on a lot of levels. So we work to identify another outcome, another route to the same outcome, and then we can work with that kiddo on the screaming or anything like that might be happening. We can work to address it, identify what's causing it, what threshold is being met there, and then how do we work to build up that tolerance to that threshold, but also how do we teach the internal process for that kid to handle that moment better the next time.
Yeah.
And by going into those raw moments, sometimes that's how you address it. By issues in the community, let's go to the community.
Yeah.
Another thing that Game Changer does that I think is really interesting is we've been able to focus on not only those areas of needed improvement, but also the areas of strength. And how do we tap into that strength and level of brilliance? And with the ASD diagnosis in general, the broad strokes of the community and culture is kind of leaning towards there are areas of brilliance that people who have this diagnosis, that they thrive in certain areas, and they don't just have things that may spark a community abnormality. Maybe they handle situations differently, but there's a level of brilliance there too. And if we could teach and build in those internal processes to address some of those areas of need, and also be able to incorporate and build on those strengths, we're talking next level stuff. Where and some of it is, a lot of it is very math driven, but there and just memory and things like that. That's ultimately where I see us working with these clients and moving kind of society to and the area to, our region to, certainly, is we're trying to create opportunities for these kids once they get to a certain age, and not just say, here we address the deficits and the need that you guys had. Now go out and do what you do. It's more so like, how else can we help you be successful? And that's kind of the next step for us, is trying to identify those strengths and not just working on the things that we would identify as weaknesses.
Oh, I love that focus on the strengths too. That's something as a teacher I wish I would have been more aware of. Like, so much of teaching, working with kids, it's how do I fix what's broken? What are you not good at, and how can I make you better at that thing? Meanwhile, the kid can read at a 52nd grade reading level, just absolutely brilliant. Like, why not also focus on that and say, hey, this is your superpower. Let's figure out where this can lead you. Like, how can we make this even better? Like, what are the things that we can do to really throw gasoline on that fire, as opposed to being like, hey, you know what? You hate math and you're terrible at math, and that's where we're going to spend all day, every day, trying to make you better at this thing that you hate and that you're not good at. Absolutely necessary, but I think you can see how over time kids start to say, well, this is kind of lame, and I don't really like being here, and this makes me feel sad all the time, and I don't feel like I'm not accomplishing anything, when focusing on the strength says, yes, absolutely, you've got this weakness, and we're going to keep working on it. But meanwhile, like, look at you, kid. Like, how can we use this as a way to navigate your future, and how can you use this as a tool? I love that.
I don't feel like what we're doing is groundbreaking or next level. We're literally looking at what we feel makes the most sense. And we've really listened to some of our clients, and like when I was at CMH, knowing where this was the need people were screaming for a long time. Like, those services having, goals not carry over to the community, working on and focusing on the strengths for an individual. The number one thing a parent wants to know with their kiddo is, how do we do what's next? Okay, we get through therapy, we got these services. What do I do once we're done with therapy?
Right.
And we want to build a resource book for these clients and parents to really operate from. But we see up to age 21. So there is several ages and stages. We've been able to create a clinic feel for our clients that is great for 7, 8, 9-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 3-year-olds, all the way up to 16, 17, 20-year-olds.
Wow.
And having clinic environments for a 16-year-old kid to walk in and be like, oh yeah, I could do therapy here.
Yeah.
Because, even kids who have things that need to be worked on, they're still teenagers and they still don't want, I've heard before, I don't want to do therapy at a baby clinic. I'm not a baby. And we say pediatric, that's kind of the focus. But we've been able to create that approach that really follows these kids through every age and stage, all the way up to age 21. And to have those resources and focus on those strengths at 16, 17 years old, they need to start tapping into that if they're not already. And that's what we try and accomplish. But the multidisciplinary approach at that age too is really cool. We have a really great bank of therapists that and team behavior technicians, all of them are able to create a unique experience for the kids.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I mean, it is a very unique experience because I watched the video on your website, and there's rock wall, and there's a little playground kind of set up, and kids are running around having fun, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I could go to therapy. Well, it seemed like it's also very focused on play and that. Talk to me about play-based therapy and why that's so important at Great Game Changer.
Absolutely. Play-based is the foundation that we've kind of operated all of our disciplines through. And when we say play-based, there's, play is a natural mode of development for every kid, whether there's deficits or not. Play is how all of our kids learn. And one phrase that I've kind of exhausted throughout our agency is that if you are able to figure out what motivates a client, you are able to capture maximum participation. Yep. If you do a meaningful activity to that client that's also therapeutic but meaningful to the client, they are going to participate and be excited to come to therapy. And if you capitalize on that motivation and facilitate max participation, you will also maximize therapeutic gain. As long as those activities are meaningful and therapeutic. And I say therapeutic, one thing we do in our clinic sometimes, if the situation calls for it, is we use Nerf guns. And Nerf guns in and of itself as an activity, like, you guys do a Nerf gun in the clinic? Like, absolutely. But you look at the task of playing with Nerf guns alone. You have fine motor coordination, gross motor coordination, visual motor coordination, peer-to-peer communication, impulse control, direction following. And Nerf guns are something, if a parent comes to us and like, I don't want my kid playing with Nerf guns. We 100% don't. But it's something for us that's an awesome activity for a kid to play, and they love and look forward to coming, and they're working on all of those deficits. And even doing, a big one in the ABA world is doing preferred, non-preferred activities, transitioning from doing something they want to do to something they don't want to do. And those transitions are tough, but again, as in everyday life, those situations happen. It is. And so you have a client who's extremely structured and regimented too. And when expectation doesn't meet reality, that's another situation where we have in just with the diagnosis in general of ASD, you have that. But play-based therapy for us, rock climbing wall, same thing. You have pre-planned motor movements. You have visual motor integration, proprioceptive input when you're looking at kind of moving your hands in space. Those are all things for us that we try and incorporate. Speech therapy, our speech therapists are so great. I just feel like we have some of the best therapists in the area when it comes to that, because so much of the effort is coming into making individualized therapy sessions. But in the fall, our speech therapists do, they put a focus on campfire type activities, and they create awesome activities for the kids that are themed, and sometimes they're seasonal, but all of the kids, they're not just coming in and doing the same activity over and over again. It's everything is done with meaning and purpose, and to capture that motivation from the clients. And the parents, the biggest thing they say is my son or daughter loves coming here. And the fact that we've been able to create a therapeutic environment that kids love coming to, a big motto we started out with is, I said, I don't want the kids to even know they're in therapy when they're here. Yeah. I want this to be such immersed in things they love doing that they think they're just having a great time. When we got our start, we started at the Children's Museum off Genesee in Saginaw. Yeah. And I was helping to build a pediatric clinic with Saginaw CMH. It was part of the initiative. And I met my wife and our kids and daughter in 2016 at the Children's Museum. And I'm like, this is an absolutely this is like a pediatric clinic on steroids. There's
Yeah.
so many awesome things to do there and play-based, and so many things I could make therapeutic as an OT. And I talked to my wife. I said, I think I have a style of therapy that might resonate with what I'm seeing. And lo, we started Game Changer Therapy Services. I was a one-man company. I brokered a deal with the Mid-Michigan Children's Museum. The CEO then was Emily Yeager. Absolutely awesome. She's with the Can Council now. And we were able to facilitate ABA, and what I found, or OT, I'm sorry, we were able to create max client engagement, and we would bounce exhibit to exhibit there, and we would integrate our services into the community. And what I would find is there's a lot of parents who go to those places or a playground or wherever, and they just sit down and let their kid play. If a kid sees an adult facilitating an activity with another kid, I would end up having 3 or 4 kids coming over and like, what you guys doing?
Yep.
But what was great, it was so many great opportunities for secondary peer-to-peer socialization and peer-to-peer play with those kids that I actually utilized that in my therapy sessions. And I wouldn't depend on it, but if it happened, I would roll with it. And then we would work and collaborate together we would jump activity to activity, and that we just continued to grow to meet the need from there.
It's such a brilliant way to approach it, because again, referring to my experience teaching, the key is really how can I get the outcome I want in a way that the kids want to do it. And we do such a disservice to kids when we're like, life is hard. You got to get used to it. And you do have to use that. And you referred to that earlier, like preferred, non-preferred. You do have to do both, because that's life. You have to learn how to cope with this feeling of, I don't want to do this, but I have to.
Yep.
Like that's a life skill. But at the same time, like, you can't just force people to do something and expect them to love it. And so if there's a way that you can say, how can I make them do or get them to do something that they want to do while at the same time accomplishes the outcome that I need? That's a win-win for everybody. It's awesome for you because now it's more enjoyable. You get more compliance. You get more participation. It's awesome for them because they're like, I get to climb a rock wall today instead of like, well, Scott is going to sit there for 20 minutes and say, no, do that better, do that better, do that better. And like, they're going to stop coming or they're not going to want to participate.
Yeah. They don't get that full carryover. And the thing is, if you make it meaningful, it internalizes so much faster.
Yeah, right.
If you make it fun. My biggest therapy aha moment is I was working at CMH and I was working with a client, and the parent said that he has motor deficits, and the number one goal they had as a family is they were a big bike riding family, and their kid was stuck in the red car with the yellow top. You know what I'm talking about? Like the little Tykes thing.
Yep.
And they said he has a hard time motor planning with his feet. He couldn't, pedal one foot or the other. And so when we assessed him, he was pushing down with both feet at the same time. And so you kind of like gridlock you have to push and kind of relieve and then push. And there's a mechanism of motor planning there with your feet. And one thing that I did with the client is I said, what type of things does he love doing? What is it? We're talking, we're playing, he's showing us everything was Power Rangers, everything. And so what we did is I went back to the office, and for my next session, I laminated some Power Rangers. And I got his favorite too, was Red Ranger, Blue Ranger. Surprise, surprise, right? Them are everywhere. I was Red Ranger all the way until the Green Ranger came in, and then I kind of jumped ship. But Red Ranger, Blue Ranger was his two favorites. And what we did is we set them on the table, and for the first 20 minutes a session, we would just play a game, as I would say Red Ranger, and he would press Red Ranger. Blue Ranger, he would use his hand. And we started doing Red Ranger, Blue Ranger. Then we moved the game to the floor, and I had him do it with his feet. Red Ranger, Blue Ranger. Another 20 minutes. Last 20 minutes of the session, I took Velcro coins, and I Velcroed them to the top of his shoes. And we went on the bike, and I said, when I say Red Ranger, I want you to push down. When I say Blue Ranger, I want you to push down. He did it in one try.
Heck yeah.
Oh, it is powerful stuff because it gets me emotional, because that was the first time I realized the power of motivation and play. When you make something meaningful. The first session evaluating, Mom says we worked with him for hours. He cannot figure out how to do it. you make it meaningful, you put in the time to kind of get the sequence planning down, and then you put that into an activity that creates a functional gain. I mean, his mom was crying in the driveway saying, she thought it was a magic trick. She's like, how was he messing with me the whole time? It's like, absolutely, we made it meaningful. And that's where, again, you see those things happen at the home. You see how much of a big deal that was for that family. And that was my one moment when I realized, this was back in 2015, that I'm like, I feel like this play-based therapeutic approach. And there's, just because it's play-based doesn't mean we're playing all the time. You go into those clinics and they much look very engaging. There's Nerf guns on the wall, there's rock walls, toys everywhere. Every single one of those has a functional, meaningful purpose for therapy. You'll never have 100% carry over those principles. Sometimes you are. Those are like those magic bullet situations. But for the most part, we're looking for a level of transition that carries over the majority of what we're working on. And I always tell parents, and we're talking, it's like, I want, if we're working on feeding, if we're working on utensil use, or if we're working on behaviors in the community and they're going out to a restaurant for the first time, I want the parents to sit down with their kid at a restaurant and have their kid order a drink or order a meal for the first time, and says they were able to do that because they went to Game Changer Therapy Services. And it's such a motivator for me for why we're doing it. Like, everything we've done, everything we continue to do, it was never my intentions to grow to where we are today. It never started out. If that was my mission right away, I probably would have failed. The focus was constantly growing to meet the need and growing to do things that make sense for the families, to literally systematically change the style of therapy that's being done in the outpatient world for kids and youth. My focus was to set out and do something that made more sense and to grow to meet the need. And everything else was a byproduct of that. If you put your focus on, you want to grow to be the biggest and all of those things, and you want to grow to do the most billables, any success we have will be short-lived if we do not put an emphasis on the clinical quality of services and constant system improvements. And one thing I think our staff have understood up to this point now is, I'm never married to the process. I'm only married to an outcome. And if somebody comes to me with a better way to do something, it'll change tomorrow. And that's been something that we've constantly had, this system improvements, updating philosophy. If it doesn't make sense to do it this way, let's get rid of it. And I'm always like that. We almost probably change too much, but they say if you don't change, you die. And we've constantly been evolving and looking to do things different that make things better.
I love that, especially in this arena where there's constantly more research coming out. There's other people across the country, across the world, experimenting and trying to improve. And you'd be doing yourself and the people that you're trying to serve a disservice by saying, well, this is how we were taught in 1979, and we're going to rinse and repeat this because we're pretty successful. Like, you got to accept the fact, like, this is the best we can do right now, with the humility of knowing that tomorrow somebody's going to come with an idea that's better, and it's our responsibility to incorporate that somehow if we feel like that's a better way to do it.
Yeah. A big push for us has been, we always grow to meet the need, and it just has been a constant influx. We just now we opened our 5th clinic off of, and this is in Saginaw off Weiss Street. But Bay City, we renovated our Bay City clinic. We bought that stretch off Wilder Road. And that is by far our biggest clinic when it comes to, we have 5 clinics. Bay City is about 18,500 square feet. And that includes the therapy gym, small therapy rooms, a jungle gym room, multiple treatment rooms. But that's where all of our administration is housed too. So all of our director level employees, and we oversee all services. But at one point in time, it was probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago, we kind of looked up. Like, I was always like a day-to-day, keeping focus on the goals and what we're working on and what was last week's agenda, what's this week's agenda. And it was weird because we started in 2016. So you fast forward 6 years, and I was kind of like, we're doing some crazy stuff right now.
Yeah, that's fast.
And at this point, at one time, I remember I'm like, we're at 50 employees. That changes things for us. Once you have 50 employees, we have like 280 employees now.
Wild.
Across Bay City, Saginaw, Midland. And, when you look at the contracts, we're the number one provider of ABA and outpatient pediatric services through Saginaw County and Bay County right now, just by volumes and referrals, but the number of kids we've been able to help with that, and the number of staff we've been able to introduce to the field. There's for us, I really love the idea of introducing new staff into the field of ABA, and we've been able to have a ton of staff come in from Bay City and Saginaw, and that they're passionate about working with kids. They're either going to school to be into teaching or into healthcare, and they want to work with kids. That's a great opportunity for us to introduce them as a behavior technician, which they work in the field of ABA, but they have to get all their certifications and their training, and they get all the training from us, but we provide that to them. And then we in-house all of that to where these individuals are introduced to the field, and they're some of the best behavior technicians we've ever seen, and they're years, and they can, it's just an amazing, it's one of those, like, holy cow.
Yeah.
Like, I was always looking here. I've never stopped to really come up for air. And it's all the team. I don't really take credit for that, but I definitely brag up Game Changers with the team that we've been able to put behind it. And that's like our director, Aaron, within our ABA world, John within our EHS side. They've just done an amazing job at growing those departments. Even during COVID, we were kind of still working to meet the need during those uncertain times, which was not easy. But being able to kind of come through that and out of that now, it's just, and we're still growing. It's nuts.
Wow. That's a lot of growth in a relatively short time, man. That's intense.
It was our CPA, and we talked to him. He's like, you grew, this was like in 2021 to 2022. He's like, you grew by, I don't know, it was like 80% growth in volume or something crazy. And he's like, I'm like, that's pretty good? He's like, that's dangerous growth.
Yeah.
He's like, your infrastructure for facilitating these things must be crazy. And I'm like, yeah, I can agree with that. Like our constant process improvements and system, and we're in a position now where we just have a dream team of either therapists. We have clinical specialists. Lindsay LaBelle is our clinical specialist for speech therapists. Stacy Tucker is with our OT side, and they kind of work directly with EHS, but to integrate those services, and all of our ABA supervisors with Erin Laskowski is our number one, our go-to. She's our director, but having the clinical specialists at each clinic, our Bay City one is Bree Hodgins-Volk, and she's absolutely fantastic. Like, all of these people are the ones, when I look back and I'm like, holy cow, I've been able to assemble this amazing group of people that carry this same positive message. If it was just me thinking all these things and everybody else has a different plan, it's every single person in our organization has that mindset of, we need to do things the right way. We need to do what makes sense to families, and we need to make therapy meaningful, and we need to make therapy fun. If everybody carries that load and that message, it makes things so much easier. You're not fighting philosophy. Everybody has, and that was part of our job, is making sure all of our employees understand what the mission and the vision is here. But for them executing it is what is so successful, and that's why I wanted to list them here, because I don't want to take the credit for that. That is them, and they're amazing.
You guys sound like, you kind of make me want to consider a second career in this field. But if somebody's listening to this and they say, they're thinking, man, this Game Changer is exactly the place I need for my kid, or maybe they're interested in working for you guys, how would they go about contacting you?
So on our website, GameChangerTherapyServices.com, there's an employee portal there, but there's a ton of information about getting services started too. We're a referral driven business. So if there's a patient or a client who's interested, or a parent who's like, I think my son or daughter could use these services, you could always contact us directly through our website, but you could also go to your physician, your pediatrician, and say, I think my son or daughter, anything we do has to be referral driven. So if a parent thinks their kid needs OT, then we can certainly do that, but there has to be a medical need there. We can't just provide it just because. But
yeah, it makes sense.
One thing that we've been able to facilitate is just used to the marketing, the billboards, the contact. Directly contacting us goes to a prompt. I'm one of the prompts on there. But we're a very close-knit group. So if somebody's interested in employing, we're constantly hiring. We're constantly looking to meet the need. And we've never closed down and turned people away as far as referrals go. We've been always able to add them to the list and work from that, and to get them in services. It's about a 2, 3, 4 week process, depending on, their schedule availability and what we're looking for as a provider. But there's transition times coming up this fall. Fall transitions, all the kids go back to school, which is logistically, we're actually doing it at the end of this week, and everybody breathes a little easier after the schedules get set. But another big area that we've been able to work into that a lot of people don't think that we could provide services to, and this would probably come with your academic side, is working with kids who have ADHD, attention issues. And because we could build in as we are influenced by our environment, we could also spark some of those things. So a lot of people come to us and say, my son or daughter's on medication and I want to do more to help. Or they say, I don't want to do the medication route. Can you guys work with my son or daughter who has ADHD? And we don't ever discourage medication use. We're kind of outside of that. Whether you take it or don't, we're not going to influence that. But we have had parents come to us with their kid and didn't want to do the medication side, and we were able to create successful outcomes to help with their ADHD symptoms, and that's great.
Very cool. Very cool. So parents, if you're thinking about Game Changer, talk to your physician. Hop on the Game Changer website, get more information, check all that out so that you can go to your physician and you can say, hey, I just checked this out. It looks amazing. Get a referral that way. But if you're a prospective employee, do the same thing. Check out the website. Listen to this episode. Man, you guys sound like you've got a killer thing going on over at Game Changer. This is super exciting that not only are you here in this room right now, but you're here in Bay County, you're here in this region helping so many families that need somebody like you to come in and say, hey, we can do this. We can do this in a better way. We can get these outcomes. We can teach kids how to be independent and have fun along the way and enjoy the process. It seems like you're checking all these boxes. It's awesome.
Yeah, no, thanks, man. And that's the thing. Like, I really love getting our message out here. Everybody tells me I talk too much at times, and I just love sending the message. It's easy to talk about these things when we're so passionate about them. You know, it's therapy for me. It's what's meaningful to me. And so I really, really do like the opportunity and appreciate the opportunity to talk about it.
Awesome. Well, I've been talking to Scott over at Game Changers. You guys are awesome. I want to thank you so much for stopping by.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you so much.